So here's the way that you normally see this presented in different spiritual traditions. Whether it's in India or China or in Greece, all around the world, they describe the way that we have the physical plane at this fundamental level. Then above that, we have the level of life energy, vitality. In China, they call it qi. In Japan, they call it ki. In India, they call it prana. But it's this vital life force, this vibrational energy, that actually animates the physical. Now, according to modern science and technology, this doesn't exist. There is no vital life force. They call this the vitalist fallacy, thinking there's any type of thing beyond the physical plane. Then beyond the level of the vital force, above that is the emotional, the mental, and then higher spiritual levels. So where does the electromagnetic spectrum come in? One of the mistakes, I believe, that's been made in the Western world in the last 50 years is trying to explain the ancient systems of the world that deal with vital life force for healing in terms of electromagnetic energy and saying they're the same thing. I don't believe they are the same thing, and there's much evidence to support that. So if you look at the body of work of someone like Rudolf Steiner, the great European Rosicrucian teacher, he said that what happens is that this vital life force, the chi, ki, prana, that exists above the physical plane, will normally go into the physical level in order to animate it. When your vital life body leaves the physical body, you die. Now, this is understood in many, many traditions. In ancient Egypt, they depicted this as the ka, the vital life body leaving the physical body, but they also had methods to be able to preserve it through things that they taught in the ancient Egyptian temples. This is part of the very deep science that I refer to as spiritual science, not abstractions, but the actual knowledge about how higher spiritual realities interact with the physical world. Most spiritual traditions teach a very shallow level of spiritual reality to the general public, but they always have groups of initiates that are taught much deeper levels of knowledge. So, with this idea that there's this vital life force above the physical that animates the physical, when it goes into the physical to animate it, when it passes through the physical, it slows way down and starts to break up. That's what we refer to as the electromagnetic spectrum. Now, of course, this is not the way that modern science looks at it. Modern science says that there is nothing but the electromagnetic spectrum and physical matter. But how then do we incorporate the incredible findings of Chinese medicine, Indian Ayurveda, healing systems from Central and South America? None of these things can even be explained according to the Western paradigm. So what this basically indicates is the same thing that Nikola Tesla indicated in his work. Nikola Tesla described the way that what we deal with in our modern technology is what he described as retarded Hertzian waves. They said there's something else that's much more real beyond these waves. He called them scalar waves. And he said these are not slower than light, they're faster than light. And they have to do with all these other principles. So Nikola Tesla and many other traditions have pointed to the fact that there's something beyond our electromagnetic technology and dealing with physical matter. Then we get into vital life force, then we get into consciousness, then we get into spirit. And again, every great spiritual tradition discusses this. So the reason I'm starting with this particular idea is that if we understand that, we will then understand the significance of a completely different type of energetic testing and dowsing that exists in Europe that is almost unknown in North America. So if we take a look at the type of dowsing work that is done in North America today, this is what in Europe they would describe as mental dowsing or psychic dowsing. Because what you do with Western forms of dowsing is that you'll be given a pendulum, and using a book like Letter to Robin by Walt Woods, there'll be a discussion of ways to program the pendulum to move in a particular way. And you will ask a mental question, and then the movement of the pendulum will give you a yes or no answer, or things of that kind. In the European system, the focus instead is on being able to detect directly every invisible vibration that exists in the world. There are no mental questions asked. There is no programming of the pendulum. It's all about being able to directly perceive the universe of invisible vibrations that affects human consciousness and energy all the time. But we're like fish in water that don't know that water exists. We don't know the vibrational world that's around us at all times with all of its different qualities. And different classical systems would have different ways of understanding these vibrations that affect living beings. To understand them in Chinese medicine, they might talk about 5 different vibrational qualities that are the 5 elements of Chinese medicine. In Indian Ayurveda, they might talk about the 3 doshas. But all of these are ways to understand a complete spectrum of the invisible energies that affect living beings all the time. So what I have on the front page of your handout, where you see this color wheel, this is related to some tremendous discoveries that were made in France in the early 1900s. Now, some of you that are old-timers in this work may remember that in the 1970s, there was a book published in California called Supersensonics by Christopher Hills. The book Supersensonics by Christopher Hills was one of the few things in North America that described the French, the European systems of dowsing and the power that they contained. I want to give you a little bit of background to what these systems are and how they work. These systems became the foundation for the modern system coming from Egypt called biogeometry, developed by Dr. Ibrahim Karim, who I've been very fortunate to work with for the last 15 years. And biogeometry not only advanced the French system of working with energies, biogeometry also managed to explain and reveal aspects of the ancient Egyptian temple science that have been hidden for 5,000 years. So these are some things we're going to get into tonight. Now, the challenge for me to give us a short presentation on this is that the things I'm going to be talking about are not things that are well known, even in metaphysical audiences in North America. And so the presentation is necessarily somewhat technical. But what we really need to understand is that it is possible to directly detect every invisible energy around us, know exactly what that invisible energy is and what power it holds. Then that power can be directly applied for any purpose. That was part of the deep knowledge of the ancient Egyptian temple science, part of the deep knowledge of the Taoist tradition in China, etc. If we're going to reclaim that level of knowledge and that level of ability, we're going to have to understand this complete spectrum of vital force, of invisible energies. So, what happened in France in the 1930s is that there were books being written at that time by Jesuit-trained French priests. And again, this is something that's almost been forgotten today. But these books that appeared in France at that time had names like the radiesthesia of the missionaries. Now, radiesthesia is the European term for a type of dowsing. Radiesthesia means sensitivity to subtle vibrations or subtle radiations. So the radiesthesia of the missionaries was a book published by a Jesuit-trained French priest that described what he learned from the Jesuits regarding how they would train the Jesuit missionaries going out to far-flung countries and islands to be able to do a type of vibrational dowsing. Because they had to be able to detect clean water sources. They had to be able to detect what food is edible and what is not. They had to be able to detect what of the native plants that are here are ones that will heal specific illnesses. Now, one of the best known of the Jesuit-trained French priests was a man named Abbé Mermet. Abbé Mermet wrote a book in French that's called Je Père. And what that means is how I work. In English, it appeared under the title of Principles and Practice of Radiesthesia. So Abbé Mermet is one of the few Jesuit-trained French priests who's been remembered today in some dowsing circles. But in North America, there's very little knowledge of this whole system of European dowsing. So what happened this time in the early 1900s was that there were a series of books appearing in France and written by these Jesuit-trained French priests from Switzerland and from France. In these texts, they revealed the actual methods that they used to detect invisible radiations. And again, this is a bit different than what we have today with mental dowsing in the West. Once that work got revealed, it also became apparent that what was held within these circles is that the priesthood essentially for thousands of years have been taught methods to detect invisible vibrations and know how they apply to higher invisible spiritual realities and also to practical healing work. So what you find in the French text is that they start talking about the ancient Egyptian temple science. They're talking about Egypt. They're talking about India. They're talking about the Chinese tradition. They're talking about the statues on Easter Island. Not from an abstract perspective, but from knowing exactly what vibrations they were designed to radiate and exactly what their effects were. So in the early 1930s, there was a French expert in radio wave technology. His name was Louis Turin. And Louis Turin knew that our modern electromagnetic technology could only detect just a very small layer of all of the invisible vibrations around us. He knew that our equipment that we have today in electromagnetic technology is extremely working at a gross level and really very, very primitive. But he also understood that what these instruments showed is that we are surrounded by invisible vibrations, that if you don't have a tool to detect it, you'll never know that vibration exists, even though that vibration may be determining exactly what your current state of consciousness is. Even though that vibration may be giving you life and health or may be killing you, you don't even know that vibration is present. So Louis Turin began to take the knowledge that was released by these Jesuit-trained French priests, and he began to apply it connected to modern electromagnetic and radio wave technology. Now what this led to was being able to identify the full spectrum of invisible vibrations that exist in the world. Now, even though he was French, he took a trip to the southwest deserts of the United States, and he began directly testing the types of invisible waves coming from all kinds of poisonous reptiles, insects, etc. So he would test various types of snakes, spiders, scorpions. What is the specific type of vibration coming from poisons, toxins, venoms? What is the specific type of vibration coming from different types of healthy tissue in the human body? Basically identifying the complete spectrum of all invisible vibrations and the power or effects that they have. Then later, his work was completed by other researchers in France. So looking at this color circle that we have here, if you take a look, we have the 7 colors of the visible spectrum, going from red to violet. Then red goes to infrared. Violet goes to ultraviolet. Ultraviolet goes to white. Infrared goes to black. Now that's as far as Louis Turin got. Then he said there's something between the black and the white in the spectrum. Now here's the first thing you need to understand about the European system and the potential power that it holds. And that is that when they talk about this as terms of color, it's not just a color. What they're talking about is a transcendental system of vibration, where the vibration comes from higher levels as it enters in toward the physical world. The exact same vibration could express itself as a color, or it could express itself as a sound, or it could express itself as an angle, or as a proportion, or as a shape, or as a number sequence. Now this concept was called the law of correspondences in medieval times. What this means is that it's been understood in classical spiritual healing traditions for thousands of years that the exact same higher divine vibration could express itself as a sound or a color or an angle or a shape, etc. So it's just a question of how it chooses to express itself. Now that's why you can have people who do nothing but healing with light and color. And you can have people who heal with nothing but sound. And you have people who heal with nothing but number sequences. And people that heal with nothing but angles. So all of these are particular ways that that higher divine vibration can express itself. What that means is that when they're identifying all of the invisible waves and vibrations that they knew how to use in the ancient spiritual traditions, and that knowledge was always kept very secret, that when they talk about it in modern times as a color, the color is just one way to express it in a form that people can recognize. Okay, I know what red is, I know what blue is. But what it really is a transcendental vibration that can express itself through any type of quality, as a shape, sound, color, angle, etc. So what we're dealing with then is a circuit of transcendental energies. Each of them has a very specific power associated with it. We'll start talking about the specific power a little bit later. Now, other researchers came in and said, well, what's between the black and the white? There's something there that's very mysterious. And they gave it a name that is often very confusing for people in modern times. When they began to research this mysterious energy between the black and the white, some of the researchers called it radiesthesia gray. But they found that this was an invisible vibration. It rarely manifested itself visibly in any form. But this was an invisible vibration that was known and used by the Egyptian priest, by the Chinese Taoists, by the masters of the Indian Vedic tradition in the Himalayas. And this particular vibration, that's almost always invisible, is the most powerful of all invisible vibrations. This invisible vibration, they found, could penetrate thicknesses of lead that cannot be penetrated by X-rays. And they showed this in their research. They showed that tools were made in the ancient Egyptian temple sites for the express purpose of projecting a ray of this powerful penetrating energy out of the tip of what were pendulums at that time. When I worked with Dr. Ibrahim Karim from Cairo, Egypt, a person who trained me in Egyptian biogeometry and gave me permission to teach it today in North America, he showed these pictures of what he called a waj. Now, it comes from an old Egyptian term, but in English it would be W-A-D-J. Waj is what later the French called the Egyptian pendulum. They were made out of clay, out of terracotta. And these ancient Egyptian pendulums have been found in archaeological digs going back 5,000 years. And they found so many of them from ancient Egypt that they are found throughout museums in Europe and all over North Africa. And whenever they appear in a museum, they have a little tag next to them that says it's a ritual object. Because when they have no idea what it is, they'll say it's a ritual object. But what it is obviously a pendulum. And it's a pendulum designed to project this very powerful penetrating wave out of the tip. So this was something that was known, and they also gave demonstrations of it from China and India and other cultures, and particularly Easter Island, where they knew all about how to create shapes that would radiate this particular vibration. One of the shapes that is an emanator of this very powerful penetrating wave, the most powerful and penetrating of all the invisible waves, is the form of a pyramid. But another form that can do it is the form of a dome. That's why the sacred builders guilds of the world in ancient times, they built the forms of the temples, the place where you would undergo initiation, the place where you would connect to spirit, in the form of a pyramid. And they were always built on a sacred power spot. One thing that my friend Dr. Karim from Egypt always says is that people make the mistake of going to places like the pyramids, and they always just look at the pyramids. They don't look at the land. It says the land is the real thing. The land is a sacred power spot. They would never have built the pyramid there except to connect to the sacred power spot, connect that to the heavens, and to have an intermediary space between the power spots on earth, power spots in the heavens, that a person could then connect to this carrier wave, this powerful penetrating invisible wave that allowed them to connect to these higher forces. So whereas they built these types of temples in the ancient world in a pyramid form on a sacred power spot, in modern times, after the Greeks figured out how to make a freestanding dome, now they make it in a dome form. Why today do they build synagogues and cathedrals and mosques with a dome form? Because the Sacred Builders Guilds knew that it was a form that created a strong concentration of this invisible radiation. Now, the confusing term that the French gave to this very powerful vibration, known and applied in a type of vibrational engineering in the ancient world, was the name negative green. But it's a confusing name because negative green is in a sense neither negative nor green. So if you take a look at the color wheel here and look at the top where it says green, and then you look directly opposite it where it appears as a gray color, and that's negative green. Why is it negative green? Because the visible green color is what they call positive green. The opposite, complementary vibrational quality is what they call negative green. That's why they gave it that name. But it confuses people. Sometimes people think it should appear as a green color, or it's somehow negative in the sense of bad.
Could
and
you
I'm
tell
going to
us?
ask people to please hold questions to the end.
Sure, I'll write it
I have
down.
a very complex series of concepts to bring out here, and I will have time at the end for questions. Thank you. So this particular vibration, the negative green vibration, is one that can be directly emanated from a variety of sources, including specific types of shapes. So what they found is that this very penetrating carrier wave, when you have it in its beneficial form, it's one of the most beneficial of all energies. I believe it's connected to what in the Indian tradition is referred to as the Shakti, the divine feminine moving force of God. The ancient spiritual traditions would build entire buildings or smaller objects that were vibrational tools that were made to be able to focus and direct this vibration. Why? Because it can send any other vibration or thought form that you attach to it. It can send it straight through solid matter, straight through physical walls, straight over far distances. So this was described in the original French text. These French texts, most of them have been out of print for 70 or more years, and many of us can't read French. So that's one reason why I sponsored this project, to translate these French texts into English. Now the thing is that the beneficial quality of the negative green energy appears in all kinds of things, but it's got a shadow side. For all of the vibrations that were identified by the French, when they identified the complete spectrum of all invisible vibrations that affect our health and consciousness all the time, what they found is that for every one of these bands of energy, that there is a beneficial component and a detrimental component. Now the key thing to know about this is that this comes from the work of Louis Turin. Again, he went to the Southwest Desert and he tested natural venoms, poisons, toxins, and he found that the primary wave coming off of these is propagating in a vertical direction. Then he tested things that were very beneficial, all types of healing substances, healthy states of tissues in the human body, these kinds of things. They tended to propagate horizontally. Now, this is going to be a tremendous simplification, but the upshot of it is the more detrimental waves tend to be what he called vertical waves. They propagate vertically. One reason is that they're leaving the plane of the Earth. The more beneficial waves, they tend to propagate horizontally along the plane of the Earth. Because one aspect of the vertical waves is that they are the waves that create death. They take things off of the Earth. But not all vertical waves are bad. These vertical waves can also be connected to very high spiritual forces. So again, this is a very deep body of work in which there are thousands and thousands of pages of research in the original French work, and then much more has been developed since then with the Egyptian work. I'm just trying to give you the bare basics of it right now, so then you can understand some of the applications I talk about in just a minute. So at that point, the French had identified the complete spectrum of all the invisible vibrations that affect us all the time. And they had identified the way that within every one of these 12 energies, these are like the bands of the electromagnetic spectrum, and they all do something different. For every band, it has a particular power, and that power has the vertical wave aspect that tends to be more harmful, or can be deadly, or the beneficial aspect that's a horizontal wave aspect. Now, when I found the French work, what I found is that they did a tremendous amount of empirical testing, where they would test a whole bunch of different wines, a whole bunch of different mushrooms, a whole bunch of different acupuncture points in the human body. And they tell you exactly what vibration was present with it. But what they never did was summarize, here is the exact power of that band. Here's exactly what you can do with that band. So what I've done over the last 15 years of working with this is to collect my own research, plus research from all of these French texts, plus research done by other people in associated fields, and to collect it together to actually indicate what every one of these vibrational powers is and how it can be applied. with that, I created this online series that I describe on the inside of your handout here about vibrational testing and fields. Now, it's broken down so that the first class is called the personal wavelength, the second is called the universal vibrational spectrum, and the third is called custom vibrational healing. What I've done is I've taken the French method of being able to work with all of these energies, and I've put it into a form that anybody can learn it, so they can test and apply these energies for the rest of their life. Because the thing is that this knowledge is very little known. Not many people know how to do this, and I wanted to make sure it didn't get lost. So the first class, the personal wavelength, was based on a classical technique, no doubt used in ancient Egypt and many other cultures, one of those used by the Jesuits, and then brought out to the public with another Jesuit-trained French priest named Abbé Ferrand. Now, the personal wavelength, at its foundation, is a very simple method. Remember that in this type of vibrational work, we do not ask any mental questions, and we do not program the pendulum. So, for personal wavelength, if you're going to take a person's personal wavelength, it's very simple. First, you want to get what the French call a neutral pendulum. A neutral pendulum is a pendulum that does not have a strong intrinsic vibration of its own. So you can't use a gemstone. You don't use things with very specific shapes. Just something that's quite neutral. So you get the neutral pendulum, and you can put it into what's called the search position, which is a back and forth movement in the European work. That's not telling you anything, but what it does is it overcomes the inertia to allow the pendulum to move freely. Then the concept is that the pendulum string is like a musical string. You can tune it to any vibration that exists in the universe. And when you tune it to a particular person, that's their personal wavelength. It's like their frequency. Again, I'm not asking any mental questions. I'm not programming the pendulum. My attention is simply on the feeling of vibration of the string coming from my fingertips and interacting with the energetic field around my body. So, in the French method, you would move the pendulum string straight back and forth, sliding the string through the fingertip. And at a particular string length, the pendulum will begin to rotate clockwise. And you can fine-tune the string length to give you the one that gives you the strongest clockwise spin. Now, what that essentially does is it shows you the person's personal wavelength. And then you can test anything. If you test something that's highly beneficial to them, then when the person is connected to something that's highly beneficial, it'll increase the amount of the clockwise spin. If it's something that's detrimental to them, like if I connect to some type of electromagnetic field, then I haven't programmed a pendulum, but it will automatically reverse spin. Because this has to do with a particular type of entrainment to the person's field. The stronger the counterclockwise direction, the more disturbance to the person's field. That's a very simple introduction to what personal wavelength is. So the personal wavelength, once you've learned the basic method, can be taken to incredible depths. What it allows you to do is it allows you to test the effect of any vibrational source, any person, place, or thing, on a person's energy field. But not just their entire energy field, on any specific organ, energy meridian, acupuncture point, gland, level of the subtle body, etc. And not from asking a mental question about it and getting a yes or no answer, from directly connecting with that vibration. Now, because of this, a whole group of medical doctors in France in the early 1900s learned this method, and then they began to expand it, to integrate with their work. And they called it medical radiesthesia. At one time, there were thousands of medical doctors in Europe that used medical radiesthesia. They would have congresses that I have the notes from in France and elsewhere in Europe, where all these doctors would get together and talk about how this had revolutionized their practice to be able to directly test a person before you apply these energies. Because where they moved the work to was where they could start navigating through anatomy charts. But here's the thing, they're not using the anatomy chart to be able to make a mental connection to the part of the body. They're using the anatomy chart for the correctly drawn shape outline of the organ or parts of the body, because there's an intrinsic resonance, an exchange of energy and information between two shapes that are the same. So a shape on the anatomy chart that's correctly drawn can be brought into resonance with an organ in a person's body. And again, what this allowed them to do is they could test anything occurring in a person's body or energy field to see if it was in or out of balance. Then they could test any vibration from any source, from a mineral, from a plant, from a drug, from an energetic practice, from anything, to see if it's actually going to have a healing effect on that problem. It allowed them to be extremely precise about this type of work. That's why my online personal wavelength class has 16 hours of video, because it goes so deeply into how you can test these things. You can test every acupuncture point in the human body, every energy meridian. You can test things that are in the human energy field outside of the body. But it's extremely precise work with a personal wavelength to know exactly what's going on in the person's energy field and how another vibration will affect it. That means it takes the guesswork out of applications of other vibrations. The other thing that it does is allow a fine differentiation between what is the most healing vibration to apply that goes beyond something like muscle testing or educational kinesiology. Because what you find in educational kinesiology or muscle testing, whether it's with the whole arm or with the fingers or other types of methods, is that it's a binary system. You either test strong or you test weak. You test strong or you test weak. And so with this French method, it's not a matter of testing just strong or weak, but you can find a slight increase of efficacy between one herb and another, between one supplement company and another for the same type of product. So that's the basic idea from the French work of the personal wavelength. Then the next one that I mentioned, the universal vibrational spectrum, is what I described as the discovery of the complete spectrum of invisible energies that affect all living beings all the time. Now with that, it's a matter then of being able to teach people how they can test every one of the bands in the system in both the beneficial aspect, the horizontal wave, and the detrimental aspect. So the tools that the French designed were tools that had different angles built into them. Now, in mental dowsing, a lot of people say it doesn't really matter what type of pendulum you have, it does being the kind of expensive pendulum, and that's absolutely true for mental dowsing. For vibrational radiesthesia, however, the tool is absolutely essential, and the tools have to be made in a very precise way, because it's the vibration on the tool that allows you to detect the presence or absence of the vibration. And so, this is the modern version of the tools that we use from the Egyptian biogeometry system. These are tools that I've imported from Cairo, Egypt, and that we use when we train people in biogeometry, and also that Dr. Karim allowed me to use for the online class for the vibrational spectrum. So basically, the way the tool is designed is that the French found that the 12 bands of energy, they will naturally form around wherever any energy is moving. So for their tools, they used to have an arrow on them and the letter N, so you had to align the tool to north. Because when the tool was aligned to north, the north-south magnetic axis created a complete spread of all 12 vibrations, so they could work with 12 vibrations. But Dr. Karim found that this method, which is of course also used in ancient China with the compass school of feng shui, where they would align their bagua according to the compass needle, that in fact it was possible to use a shape instead of the north-south magnetic axis. And so there is on the disc a particular shape on it. It looks a little bit like a bullet. It's got a dome top, it's got 7 lines beneath it, and it has another shape called an L in biogeometry that cleans the energy up. That particular shape creates a line of energy and actually creates the presence of all 12 bands at fixed locations on the disc. Then that same pattern exists on a smaller movable dial at the top. And with that, you can tune the smaller dial to point to any of the vibrations on the base dial. Once it's set to that particular vibration, so for instance, I'm just going to set it now to test for that negative green vibration, then it's simply a matter, without asking any mental questions, and without programming the pendulum, to connect your energy to the vibration that's now set on the pendulum and put it into the energetic field of an object. If the energy quality it's set for is present, there will be an automatic pull on the pendulum. And the intensity of the swing of the pendulum is a sign of the intensity of the energy that is present in its energetic field. So that's showing the presence of this negative green energy coming from this particular stone, which I'll describe a little bit later. So this allows you to test directly any person, place, or thing for exactly what energies are present in their field. Then the same principle is true for the vertical wave pendulum. Just like for the horizontal wave pendulum to test the beneficial parts of all 12 bands, the vertical wave pendulum has the dials for all 12 vibrations, but now they're set so that they are aligned vertically. So it picks up only the vertical waves, not the horizontal. It also has 2 dials. The use of the 2 dials allows you to tune in both a primary vibration and a secondary vibration. Now we use that for things like testing earth energy lines. In the work from Biogeometry today, coming from Dr. Ibrahim Karim, they have a very different approach to earth energies based on classic things in the Egyptian tradition in some cases that are very different from the modern Western approach to the toxic earth energy lines. So one of these is that in the biogeometry approach, we do not block or divert any lines. Why? This concept is the same as what we would have in Chinese medicine. If a person has a toxicity problem in an energy meridian of their body, we do not try to block or divert the energy meridian in their body. There, that'd be catastrophic. And our knowledge of the Earth's energetic system, the effects of changing their natural energy circulation networks, is something from the Egyptian tradition they choose not to do. What you can do instead, if you have a high enough level of knowledge, is you can actually transform the quality of the vibration on the earth energy line. You leave it in place, but you transform its vibrational quality to a higher level. To be able to test for the presence of the earth energy line, the Egyptian method in biogeometry is not to use dowsing rods, although of course they can work fine. I'm just saying in this system there's a different approach. In this system, you tune into the exact energy on the earth energy lines. Now the thing is that for the earth energy lines, they have a primary energy of negative green, of this very powerful penetrating carrier wave of energy. So it has both the horizontal wave and the vertical wave. So they would get one of the vertical wave pendulums, set it to the negative green quality, and then start testing over the room and get a movement over exactly where they're getting that particular vibration. Normally this is done by moving along the baseboard of the room and seeing where you get the hit, and then tracing out the energetic movement. Then they would put some type of corrective device. It could be some type of a shape, it could be some type of a stone that has a very beneficial energy. And you'll put it at the place that the line is emerging into the room, so that now it transforms its energy into a form that is not harmful. It's a type of energy alchemy to transmute a detrimental vibration to a beneficial vibration. And their level of knowledge about exactly how this works and again, exactly what the vibrations are is quite high. Now, I want to say a little bit more about some of these vibrations to clarify what's happening here. So again, what we're doing with this is we're using a method whereby we can begin to rediscover the lost knowledge of the world's ancient spiritual healing traditions and the knowledge of the sacred builders guilds that built all the temples in the ancient world. Again, the knowledge of ancient Egypt, India, China, etc. By making all of these invisible vibrations something we can directly detect and start applying. So here's the thing about the negative green energy, for example. After the first French researchers found that the negative green energy was designed into the form of the pyramids, the form of the domes over the sacred power spots where they built the temples, and they began to find that this energy was highly penetrating. It goes straight through solid walls. If you use the beneficial qualities of negative green, you can send a beneficial quality a tremendously long distance. But if you use the detrimental qualities, you could send a very toxic or deadly wave a very long distance. Now, this is something that we now find with our modern electromagnetic energy systems. Because the thing about electromagnetic energy today is that the electromagnetic energy that we're using in all of our circuits today is negative green. Negative green is energy conduction. It is nature's form to conduct energy. So all of our electromagnetic circuits conduct this negative green energy. People from these ancient temples would have recognized this, but they would have said, what are you doing? You've designed this so that it's full of the detrimental wave of this carrier wave energy. Why didn't you take that out? And it was because we had no concept of the biological effects of vibrations. But using that type of knowledge, Dr. Karim from Egypt then developed systems to be able to put particular shapes, particular vibrations onto the electromagnetic lines to change their vibrational quality. So we can do that. But the thing that makes the electromagnetic fields toxic to us, the reason why people get brain tumors from using their cell phone, why children get leukemia by having their bedroom close to major power lines, all the things that have been demonstrated in all types of scientific studies, is because of the strong presence of the vertical wave of negative green. It's related to toxicity. It's related to a death process. So now we're beginning to see a link between the ancient spiritual traditions and their hidden knowledge and what we've done with our modern science and technology. And now we can apply some of that lost knowledge to change the quality of the things we're working with today in a completely conscious way. Because here's something very important. A lot of the work that we do today in North America to transform energies is through the projection of thought forms. Now this is referred to as intent, or through the use of blessing and prayer. Now in the ancient world, they did this too. They knew that the human being could create a vibrational quality through a thought form, through blessing and prayer. We can project an energy onto an earth energy line that will transmute it. We can project through the power of our mind an energy onto the electromagnetic field that will transmute it. And they knew that in the ancient world too. But the thing is, they didn't do just that. Because they understood the complete system, they understood that that vibration had to be anchored into something on the physical plane that would not shift. Because otherwise, a thought form will wear off. The thought form is not physical. The thought form has to be anchored. And so they then understood the science of exactly what substances will anchor the thought form, or anchor the needed vibration. The precise use of specific types of stones and minerals, the precise use of certain types of essential oils, these kinds of things. So let's talk a little bit more about the negative green as we go more deeply into this. Fascinating thing about these energies is that they affect us not just at the physical level or at the energetic level, they affect us at the emotional level, mental level, and higher spiritual levels. A later researcher, a fellow from Russia, who was living in Egypt in the 30s, 40s, 50s, this particular Russian researcher began to use the French methods of testing energy, and they went to the sacred sites of Egypt. And this particular researcher found that when he went to the sites of the Coptic Christian saints, and he tested for the negative green energy, the carrier wave energy, he got massive energy fields of the beneficial horizontal wave of negative green, the carrier wave. And he tested around the bodies of the saints directly, and he found that's where the energy was coming from. So that a person who had really connected to spirit, who had done a lot of blessing and prayer, they generated tremendously strong vibrational fields in the body. And when a person has generated enough of this beneficial negative green in their body during life, it has a direct result after death. And that is, it creates what's known as the incorruptible body. The body does not disintegrate after death. This is known with certain Taoist masters in China, certain Indian masters, Buddhist masters, Catholic masters, etc. Incorruptible body is known to multiple traditions. This is the actual vibrational source of the incorruptible body. A tremendous infusion of the negative green in the body. And so around the tombs of the Coptic Christian saints became pilgrimage centers and places where people came to be healed because of the intense concentrations of this energy around there. And he began to realize he could even test people's levels of spiritual development by testing the intensity levels of the field of this exact vibration in and around their body. And so he then said the negative green energy is not just a carrier wave, it's also a spiritual carrier wave. And that's the way Dr. Karim from Egypt often refers to this, the spiritual carrier wave. with negative green. Now, when Dr. Karim began to get involved with this work, he did another amazing thing, and I'm trying to summarize a huge amount of information for you in a short period of time. And that is that the French had found the complete spectrum of all these different precise powers that are linked to invisible rays around us all the time. And that became the 12 bands that you see here in this picture. But then we have the issue of Dr. Karim did a brilliant act of lateral thinking, and he said, no, they're testing the periphery of objects, and they're finding these 12 bands. But what's in the exact center of that object? Is there a different vibration that's in the center of every energy system? It's in the center of every shape. If you go back to ancient Egypt, you'll see a depiction of a point in the center of a circle, and that's the image of Ra'ah, the measure or being of the sun. Now, for the Freemasons and Rosicrucians, they'll show you the same picture. A point in the center of a circle, and they'll have a title under that says the Godhead. If you study astrology, they'll use the exact same point in the center of the circle and say, again, like ancient Egypt, that's for the sun. If you study alchemy, they'll have the exact same image and say it's gold. And in fact, all these things are connected together. Dr. Karim then, using the French methods, tested the center of different shapes. The center of the chakras in the human body. The center of the cells in the human body. Every major sacred power spot that native traditions say is the power spot on Earth, for what's its vibrational quality. He would test the energy field of the human being when they're doing very deep blessing and prayer. And he found that all of these had the exact same vibration. He found 3 precise vibrations that are present in the center of every shape. And that includes a shape that a person has created. Now this is part of the Sacred Builders Guilds. They knew that there are conscious natural forces that are constantly interacting with us based on the shapes that we create. This gets too far involved for me to discuss in this lecture tonight. But let's just say they knew the way that natural forces will interact with any design that we create. They knew the laws of how that worked. And so even if I create a circle on a piece of paper, if I test the center of the circle that I drew, I will find these 3 specific vibrations in the center of the circle that I drew. But it's also found naturally in every sacred power spot in nature, naturally in every chakra in your body, naturally in every center of every cell. And we can create it through the power of the mind through blessing and prayer. That's the actual beneficial vibration of blessing and prayer. It has the exact same vibration as a sacred power spot. It has the exact same specific vibration as the center of the chakras in your body. So Dr. Karim referred to this as the biogeometry 3. 3 vibrations that have connection to the center of all systems. And that's what you see right here with that gold in the center of the image. Now this BG3 energy, and BG3 is just the short term he uses for biogeometry 3, is what I refer to in my online classes as the centering vibration. What Dr. Karim found is that this energy found naturally in the center of everything, and through various design principles that he developed in Egyptian biogeometry, we can use to begin to create and to magnify this particular type of energy. He found, number 1, that of the 3 vibrations that are present with this energy of the center, the highest of the 3 is what he called the higher harmonic of gold. The higher harmonic of gold is a very powerful vibration that is exactly what you see in the depictions of ancient spiritual traditions, where they show a golden aura around the head or the entire body of a spiritual master. That's not a metaphor. It's an actual vibrational field. It's in resonance with physical gold, which is why one Egyptian method is to hold a piece of gold in one hand and a neutral pendulum in another, and then make an energetic link between the piece of gold and the neutral pendulum. And then you can use the neutral pendulum to test over a person, place, or thing to see if the higher harmonic of gold energy is present, if that gold is in the energetic field. Because gold is considered to be a crystallization, a condensation of this higher energetic quality that you see in the energy fields of the saints. So this golden energy is the vibrational quality found in the center of all these systems, whether a human being designed it or whether higher spiritual beings designed it like a human body or power spots on the earth. Now the effect of this is that it has the power to help to balance the energy of any living thing. It centers and balances all living energy systems. So the best summary I can give to you about this particular way of working is that the energies of the 12 bands, what we can test with the vertical and horizontal pendulums from Egypt, what those energies are is that they are specific powers that will push energy this way or that way. They'll make energy more yin or more yang. They'll make it hotter or colder. They'll sedate activity or they will activate the energy. But the energy coming from the center does not push the energy one direction or another. It pushes the energy straight back to center. It centers and balances the energy system regardless of if it's in excess or deficit. That's one thing that's really remarkable about this energetic quality of the center. Dr. Karim is the modern discoverer of the exact vibrations of this quality of the centering vibration and the developer of methods to be able to apply it. Now to detect that energy, one method is the piece of gold in one hand and the neutral pendulum in the other I showed you a moment ago. But it actually only detects the component of the gold. There's two other components that may not be detected. So we developed a particular pendulum based on some principles that you may recognize from ancient Egypt if you have a background in that work. It has 16 discs and a particular shape to the hemispherical cap at the top. And this is called the BG3 pendulum or the BG16 pendulum. And with this, again, I'm not programming it, I ask no mental questions. I'm just moving the string in a back and forth search position. And if that strong centering vibration is present, it will then pull the pendulum into a strong clockwise spin over the stone. Now there's much more to these techniques than I'm telling you here, which is why I have these online classes. And for Dr. Karim's work, we have a specific live biogeometry class. And that's the basic idea. So this was the one specifically tuned to find that centering vibration that balances all of the energy systems. And the horizontal and vertical pendulums for testing the 12 bands that have precise polarized energies. So the upshot of this is that when you learn the complete system, you can test any person, place, or thing for exactly what energies are present in it. Or you can infuse any specific vibration into a person, place, or thing to have a healing effect, or to change its consciousness, or at the highest level, to make an alchemical transformation of it from one level of development to the next level of development. That's when you get into the really high work in great spiritual traditions. That's where you get into the permanent changing of the person to a higher level. That's what you see described in the text from the ancient Egyptian temple science. That's why at Vesica we have the courses that are based on spiritual science, the alchemical change in the person's permanent structure, and in the vibrational science that helps to support and catalyze that process, just the same as in the ancient world. So I'll give you an example of a precise power of some of these different bands. When you're dealing with the orange band, one of the powers of orange, when it's applied at the vibrational level, the energy level, vitality level, the orange has the effect of forcing an energy center to purge toxicity out of it. Now, that's one reason why the system of pranic healing coming from the Philippines, developed by Master Choa Kok Sui, in pranic healing, they have a method where the person is taught out of their own bioenergy field to project what they call orange prana. And the projection of that orange prana is that it will literally force part of the person's energy body to expel the toxicity that is present there. But it's a very strong vibration, so they tend not to use it above the lower part of the chest, because the heart and the brain are too sensitive for this vibration unless you really know what you're doing. But that orange vibration at the vitality level is what forces things to purge themselves. So if we take a look at something like the power of citrine. Citrine is a type of quartz, has an orange-yellow appearance to it. In China, they love citrine. Unfortunately, most of the stuff that's being sold as citrine now in North America is baked amethyst. Amethyst baked in an oven to make it look orange, and sold as citrine, because citrine is worth many, many times more. It's extremely important to understand today that a huge amount of stones are irradiated with gamma rays, are artificially heated, are dyed, and otherwise tampered with to make them look more attractive, but in a way that either destroys their beneficial vibrational qualities or makes them actively energetically toxic. But you will find a strong orange band in citrine, for example. It also begins to explain, if you test things like essential oils, why they use certain types of oils as anointing oils in the ancient world. So one of the most common of the anointing oils is frankincense. Frankincense is full of the orange band vibration. When you put the frankincense on an energy center of the human body, the orange band will force it to start purging toxicity out. That way you can start activating the energy there that normally is immobilized by the amount of toxicity we have in our energy centers. But with frankincense, we have another aspect to it as well, and that is that not only does frankincense have the orange vibration, it also has the gold vibration. Because it has the gold vibration, not only does the orange force the purging of the toxicity, but the gold vibration creates a natural resonance with a higher spiritual state of consciousness, and also it helps to alchemically change that orange band to a higher vibration, a higher octave of orange, so it can actually be used on the heart. It can be used on the third eye center. It can be used on the crown. Whereas normally, other orange band sources in the ancient world were not used on the head, for example. But frankincense can be, because it combines the orange with the gold. So I've been doing work now for years to be able to test the exact vibrations present in different stones, in different plants, in different animal parts that were used in Chinese medicine and things like that, to know exactly what bands are present. And that explains the way that they can be directly used for healing purposes. Now that's what I get into in the third class in the series, the custom vibrational healing. So that's a bit of a background for understanding the background to the method of vibrational radiesthesia, some of the specific techniques, and a little bit of the history. Again, there's so much more to it, and in the online classes are going to go into more detail. But I want people to be clear on one thing, and that is that the online classes I have in this are specifically on the French work and my own research, and deal with the 12 vibrational bands. I also teach you how to test the energy of the center, because that's very important for testing as well. But to learn all of the methods of dealing with just the centering vibration, that's the focus of Dr. Kareem from Egypt. And that's contained in the live biogeometry classes. That is not available as an online training. Now, what I found in dealing with stones and with plants is that there's a very small number of plants and stones that have extremely strong centering vibration, that master balancing force, as well as having specific energies that are in the 12 bands that give it other specific powers. Everything has some of the centering vibration, because everything has a center, but only a small number of minerals and plants have a very strong field of it. So I found when I tested the plants, that the plants that had the strongest centering vibration were ones that were known as adaptogens, or that were known to the Chinese as master tonic herbs. That's a very small number of plants on the planet. And so, since the presence of the centering vibration is actually the identifier of these master tonic herbs, these master healing herbs known to classical traditions, I thought the same thing must be true for stones, but no one has ever tested stones from this perspective. So then I've done years of work now in testing different stones for which ones have the strongest amount of the centering vibration. In other words, that means we also have stone adaptogens as well as plant adaptogens. So what this came to then is this understanding that a very small number of stones and plants are going to have this very powerful energetic quality. And so, for example, I found a stone called indigo gabbro. Indigo gabbro has an unusual amount of the centering vibration, but it also has very strong bands in indigo and violet. Long story short, I found that the indigo gabbro stone, which comes from one small deposit in Madagascar, is a stone that works extremely well to absorb toxic energy from a person, place, or thing, and to actually transmute it to a beneficial energy. Most dark stones that can pull toxic energy out of a system, you will have to clear that stone regularly. And I read a lot of books that talk about certain stones being self-clearing, but I've done vibrational testing on them, and most of them are not self-clearing. Closest thing to self-clearing stone I've found is the indigo gabbro. It has an alchemical effect between the centering vibration and the energy in the indigo and violet bands that makes it really fantastic for absorbing toxic energies and transmuting them. So it's a stone that I often use on people's bodies or carried on the body. And also, I was able to find from Madagascar a polished form of it. I use this on toxic earth energy lines at the baseboard when they enter into the room to be able to transform them. I use it on top of wireless routers and radio frequency microwave sources in your home, like what you use for the home internet network. And in testing this, I find that it greatly strengthens the people in the area compared to not having those corrections. Also, things like it in the form of a massage wand can then be used over the meridians of the body and does a great job of helping to clear out the meridians. Another one that I found very interesting is one, again from Madagascar, from a small deposit, is I call iron rose quartz. It's rose quartz that contains an iron deposit with it, but the thing is that natural iron, called hematite, or natural rose quartz, neither of them have very strong centering vibration. But when these two elements are brought together in this location, the alchemy of these particular elements together created very strong centering vibration. And so in Chinese medicine, they use the iron to help to pull all of the stray energy that accumulates in the human chest and the head that causes illness. They use it to pull it down to the lower dantian, the lower abdomen, where it can be safely stored. And that already is a corrective for many problems in Chinese medicine. Now, there's a tremendous amount more to understanding these stones and their vibration. I just wanted to give you a very quick example of what that is and how it works. I also want to mention that in the stone realm, there is a tremendous new development, which is that the classic knowledge from China, the Chinese Taoist tradition, what they knew about the therapeutic applications of stones and minerals has been secret for thousands of years. And even today, the people teaching it only teach it through oral transmission. People like the Taoist teacher Jeffrey Ewan in North America. Now, just this year, one of Jeffrey Ewan's students published a book called Stone Medicine. And Stone Medicine is the first book ever published in English that talks about the real Taoist practices with stones, and it's very detailed. When you read the content of something like this, and you compare it to what you get in an average Western book about work with crystals, you'll see that the Taoist work is light years beyond. Accumulated healing observations over thousands of years, extremely precise, amazing stuff. From the most fundamental level of physical healing up to the highest level of alchemical spiritual development. Really amazing things. So I've been lucky to be able to take classes directly with Jeffrey Ewan, to network with a whole group of Chinese medical doctors that know and use this knowledge of stone medicine. Their stone medicine is as fully developed as their plant medicine, as fully developed as their knowledge of using herbal formulas. That's why there's also a flyer in your handout for a live crystal course that I'm giving in Asheville in December, where I'm going to go into detail about some of these hidden Chinese Taoist teachings and my own direct vibrational testing of these stones, and teach more about their particular direct application. So that's the kind of thing that we can do once we have a knowledge of the actual vibrational science behind all of this. So to end with today, I want to talk a bit about the cymatics conference coming up and how this vibrational work connects to it. So I mentioned to you that a healing vibration from a higher level could manifest as a sound, or as a shape, or as a color. And so in the realm of sound healing, you can access any healing vibration that exists in the universe, if you know what you're doing. And with the work that I've been doing, I've been networking with Mandara Cromwell, who works with the cymatics healing device that I have up here. The first cymatics sound therapy device ever made available to the public has only been available for a couple of years now. And I've been doing vibrational testing with it to see the effect using the French methods that it has on people's glands, organs, different aspects of the energetic field, and doing testing for what the effects of it are even on particular types of stones, particular types of plants. So for example, if you deal with a gemstones sometimes today that they charge thousands of dollars for, have been absolutely hammered by gamma radiation so that it will change the color to something more valuable. But if you test the effect when anybody wears it on their body, it has a terrible effect on their energy field, extremely toxic. I tried all kinds of things with my vibrational testing to completely clear the vibrational imprint from the gamma radiation. I can clear all kinds of other stuff, but that imprint from gamma radiation is so deep and so sticky, super hard to clear. I tried literally over 100 different methods. None of them worked. The only thing I've ever found that worked for the deepest level of gamma radiation affecting stones is this particular device from the cymatics body of work. When I put that gemstone at the base and I run channel number 10, which is for detox and for getting rid of all kinds of toxicity in the human energy field and body. One thing is that channel 10 includes a particular vibrational sequence developed by a British osteopath that he used for his patients who had undergone radiation therapy for cancer. And so he used that to help take the vibrational imprint from the radiation out of their body. Now, I'm not making any medical claims for this. I'm just saying that's the source of the sound vibration that is present in channel 10 that I found empirically would take that imprint out of the gemstone. One thing I found that did. So I want to tell you a little bit about the background of cymatics. If you look at the front page here, you'll see the image in the upper left corner of a cell being affected by sound waves. And then in the middle right, you see a particular geometric form that is created in cymatics work when you put a specific sound vibration into a material. So again, in a very limited amount of time, to make a long story short, what happened is that in the early 1900s, a Swiss medical doctor named Hans Jenny began to work with putting sound vibrations into light powders on a flexible plate, some type of a membrane, but also worked in putting sound vibrations into liquids and pastes and oils and other surfaces. And he developed the modern science of cymatics. Cymatics, the term, is based on the Greek term for wave, which is chyma. So in German, they refer to this as kymatics, but in English we refer to it as cymatics. So this image you see right here is an image that literally appears in specific materials when a sound vibration is applied to it. If you're not familiar with cymatics, I have 2 free articles on my website. The www.vesica.org is the address, and I've got 2 detailed articles that talk about the history of cymatics and the development of the new public healing device coming out of that work. So essentially what happens when you see things like the films developed by Hans Jenny, and I'm sure there'll be all types of illustrations of this at the Vibrational Sound Healing Conference happening here in Atlanta this weekend. Y'all are super lucky that a conference like this that people travel from all over the world for is right here in your backyard. Fantastic. I'm lucky because it's just 4 hours away from me because I live in Asheville. So what you'll see with the films of this is that, let's say you have a light powder on the plate, You put one sound vibration into it, and immediately all the powder begins to form up into a specific sacred geometric form and holds that pattern. Then change the sound vibration to something else, and immediately it changes to a completely different sacred geometric pattern. It shows you the way that sound structures matter, the way that every tissue, every structure in your body has a specific vibration, and through applying the right sound vibration, that structure in the body can be resonating. You can create any type of shape information from a sound vibration. That's what cymatics demonstrates. And again, that's one image from the cymatics work. Now, what came out of this is beginning to see the way that a specific sound vibration forms a particular structure, a particular shape. And in fact, Anjani found that if he combined enough different sound vibrations together, so not just one sound vibration, but a whole group of them together, he could get the powder on the plate to begin to aggregate together, rise up vertically, and move like a living being, which is incredible. Not just making a 2D mandala from the vibration, but moving up vertically and then moving forward like a living being. So this work was taken up by a brilliant British osteopath named Dr. Peter Guy Manners. And over a period of 50 or more years, he did tremendous amounts of research to find the exact sound healing codes to resonate all types of structures in the human physical and subtle bodies. Now, there's something I refer to here on the front page called the secret of 5. What Dr. Manners discovered is that if he worked with his patients in his clinic with just one vibration, he didn't get the optimal healing effect. And he found that also if he combined 2 sound vibrations, 3, 4, but he found if he combined exactly 5 sound vibrations together, that was the key. When the 5 sound vibrations were properly combined, then he saw incredible therapeutic effects in his clinic in Britain. And he applied this for over 40 years in clinical practice. When you go to my website and read the articles about cymatics, I've got a picture there of Dr. Manners when he's 101 years old. He has a complete head of hair. He's totally with it. And so he lived to well over 100. And he said the reason why he was in such good shape was that he was on a daily basis exposed to these vibrations with working with his patients. And in fact, the only reason that he stopped working is that after he turned around 100, his wife said, "You've been telling me you're going to retire whenever you slow down, and you're 100 and you haven't slowed down, so we're going to move off to the English countryside, whether you like it or not." And he said, "Okay, I'll put you off for like 40 years, so I guess we're going to do that." So he handed off all of his technology and a knowledge of over 750 different sound codes that created all types of specific therapeutic effects in the human body and energy field to my friend Mandara Cromwell, who then took that technology and began to create therapeutic cymatic devices in North America. She upgraded the earlier technology by Dr. Manners into a new form and began to create clinical healing units where she could tune in any of the 750 different commutations, determine how long it was going to be applied, and she could also determine exactly where in the body to apply it through using a handheld applicator. Now, another thing that Dr. Manners had discovered is that when you apply the specific 5 vibrational sound code together, something he called a commutation, when you applied it to the body, it didn't work just to have it played in the atmosphere around you. That would have some effect, but you didn't get a full therapeutic effect. You had to have the body in direct contact with the sound vibration, and the sound vibration had to be directed and amplified through a transducer. So at first they had clinical units. Clinical units could cost $20,000. You had to be trained for months, if not years, on how to dial everything in for a person, and then where to use a handheld applicator on specific points of the person's body to be able to get the right therapeutic effects. And when this technology was first brought to North America, it was primarily used on animals because of challenges with FDA regulations and that sort of thing. And the work on animals was very amazing in its results. So for example, on the front page here, this is from a racehorse that had a 95% tear of a tendon. This is the same tendon in the human being as your Achilles tendon. Now when the racehorses get a tear this significant, it's said to be irreparable and they will kill the horse. So in this case, they said, well, don't kill the horse, let us work with it for 6 to 8 weeks. And so they did a series of applications with the cymatics device, and at the end of it, you see here, after a 6-week protocol, that a 95% tendon tear is completely healed. Theoretically impossible, but done in just 6 weeks and shown through ultrasound scan. So they had fantastic effects for physical repair with this. Then it became a matter of getting the permission to use it on human beings. Now, it had already been used on human beings for over 40 years in Britain, but the regulatory agencies in Britain and the US are not the same thing. So that then led to a whole series of research projects, many of which will be reported on at the cymatics conference this weekend, I expect, where they showed things like this. And this shows you the inflammation in an athlete's leg at the beginning of the session. After 20 minutes, the red spot of the inflammation is almost gone. And 25 hours later, it's still gone. Then the picture that you see here, the before and after. The before shows the tremendous levels of inflammation around the chest and the breast. Now, it's understood in the West that inflammation is a cause of many, many degenerative diseases, chronic illnesses. They say the same thing in Chinese medicine, but in Chinese medicine they refer to it as heat toxins. So it's the same thing, it's inflammation. And it's beginning to be better and better understood the role of things like inflammation in the lymph tissue and the breast tissue, leading to breast cancer, etc., how this works. And so it shows in 20 minutes, through applying the vibrations now through the feet rather than directly on the body through a handheld applicator, again, they're getting rid of this inflammation in the body very quickly. So this led to 2 major developments. And again, I'm compressing a big body of work very briefly here.
Very well.
Thank you. And that is that one of the first things is that they managed to be able to get this approved by the FDA as an electroacoustic massager. And so as an electroacoustic massager, it is approved for the purpose of pain relief and stress relief. Can't make any other claims for medical application. Of course, you can go back and take a look at the records of Dr. Peter Guy Manners in Britain, and all of the medical work that he did for 40 years with the exact same frequencies, but we can make no claims of that type here in North America. It's for stress relief and it's for pain relief. The other big movement forward was that Mondara Cromwell got to the point where it's like, you know, these clinical units are expensive. It takes me a long time to train the people to use it. I need to find a way that people can have this as something they can have in their own house and use on a regular basis. So what she did is she looked at all the different 750 sound codes, and she used the indications that Dr. Manners had given her to figure out that different sound codes fit together into a set. They'll all be part of a functional set. So she could put together all these different ones that related to the human respiratory system, the different ones related to oxygenation, different ones that increase vitality in the energy system, different ones that help to work against aging, different ones that work to counter inflammation in the body, ones that take stress out at the cellular level, these kinds of things. And rather than apply it through a handheld applicator, once she had these sets of frequencies together, she then figured out that she could make it in the form of these gel pads, and the person could simply put their feet on the gel pads, run one of these channels for about 30 minutes. That's the time of an average channel to run. And all they have to do is keep their feet on the gel pads, and the transducer in the device will send a coherent acoustic wave through the entire body. I'll often run a program on this for a person that I'm doing a sample session with, and they'll say, wow, I feel it all the way up to the top of my head. And that's exactly the way it works. So she managed to get it into a form where it could be available for the use in spas. People could buy it for home use, etc. And that's just happened very, very recently. It's the first time that this cymatics technology has been available to the general public. And it's that simple to use. Now, with it being a simple acoustic sound wave, it's different from healing devices that put electromagnetic frequencies into the body. It is an electromagnetic device. You do plug it into the wall. And you should always use a surge protector with it to make sure that voltage spikes don't injure it. But what's actually going into the body is not a raw electromagnetic frequency. There are some electromagnetic healing devices out, and some of them do a very good job for what they do, but they tend to be stressful on the human body, because the direct application of electromagnetic frequencies to the human body, they contain the vertical wave, or the electrical wave that we talked about before, vertical wave of negative green, and so they can be very stressful on the body. So like certain types of Rife devices that you dial in certain vibrations that are meant to kill pathogens in the body. They may kill the pathogens, but they can also be very stressful on the body while that's happening. Because this is a coherent acoustic sound wave going through the body, it affects the tissues quite differently, I find, than a raw electromagnetic frequency. So one of the things with it is that with some electromagnetic healing tools, you cannot have any metal on your body. But when you use the cymatics device, you can have metal on your body no problem, because it's a sound wave rather than being an electromagnetic frequency. Also, you can be doing anything else you want to do at the same time, as long as you simply keep your feet on the unit while you're sitting down. So, for example, I usually spend up to 2 hours a day answering emails. So it's during the time that I'm answering emails that I'm going through from 1 to 3 sessions on the device every day, and then able to do it while I'm having to sit there anyway, doing all my emails or phone calls, and I don't have to take any other time out of my particular schedule. So I found it to be incredibly beneficial, and it's an absolutely remarkable device. So this particular device is now available to the general public. It's a quarter of the price that the pinnacle units were. I got it under the $5,000 mark. Other people are getting it for spas, so people get it for single sessions, things of that kind. I'm sure they're going to talk much more about it at the class this weekend. For those that are not coming to the Sound Healing Conference, but again, do take a look at my website. I've got a whole background of the science of cymatics, the work of Dr. Peter Guy Manners, and the use of this particular device. Every one of the different channels does have a very particular functional effect, and I usually recommend to people that are just starting out with it to start with channel number 1, which is for stress. Now, it's not just stress psychologically, but it's actually to take the stress out of the cells of the body. Because once you can take the stress out of the cells of the body, you can begin to reverse all types of degenerative processes. And until that stress is taken out, other things are harder to do. So I'm going to just wrap up here with mentioning about a couple other things I got questions from people. One is that with Dr. Kareem's work in biogeometry, he created a CD called the Sirius Odyssey. The Sirius Odyssey has audible music, but behind it he encoded all types of powerful vibrations that create a very strong centering vibration in the environment whenever this is played. Also, it's called the Sirius Odyssey because he encoded into it all types of vibrations related to the ancient Egyptian temple science and what was known as the journey to Sirius. This was essentially a type of spiritual connection to the energies of the star Sirius, and the vibrations of this journey are actually encoded along with the centering vibration into the sound codes here. You can actually test that energy coming off of the sound if you know how to use these tools. Then, I had done a series of projects where, in dealing with the 12 bands of the complete vibrational spectrum, which allows us to test and apply any invisible vibration in a fully conscious manner. For the level of work that I got to, I had to subdivide each of the 12 bands into 12. That gave me 144 separate subbands, where I could be extremely precise about exactly what vibration was present, or that I needed to apply to a system to balance it. So with that being the case, I worked with a group in Chicago, and they made this for me, in which The one with a silver appearance here, it's got a little place on the top you can put a cord if you want to wear it, but I mostly just put it on the body in places where there's a disturbance, or put it under food or liquid to charge it. And what they did is they put the antidotes to the 144 different subbands of the detrimental aspects of the complete spectrum into this. They put the complete composite 144 beneficial vibrations into the one with the gold. So when it's put on the body or something else, the body can, out of the gold one, select what beneficial vibration it needs. And out of the silver one, it can then use that to antidote toxicity held in different parts of the vibrational body. And I apologize for yawning, but I actually just got back from my whole trip in California. And I've been running all day, and I just drove here, so bear with me. The other thing here, this laser is one where we take out the diode and clean the diode of the laser, and then permanently infuse into it very strong centering vibration and all 12 beneficial bands, so that then it can be put on any person, place, or thing as a very quick method of clearing its energy to a very deep level. And then I made a series of inserts. Again, this group in Chicago makes these for me. And some of the inserts include the same vibrations that are in the cars. And so this is the composite of the antidotes to the 144 subbands and their detrimental aspect, so that when I add that into the top, it then adds its vibration to what I'm sending out of it to clear things very quickly. So for example, when I clear stones, I can clear the stones extremely quickly by simply playing this quickly over the stone.
With the radiation?
What's that?
Gamma rays too?
No, not gamma rays. Again, gamma rays are one of the only things that won't clear. For gamma rays, the only thing I found to clear is channel 10 on the cymatics device. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here and just open it up to any questions people have as we come to a close. Yes, please.
Well, I'm interested in how much these things cost, but also, do you have the pendulums that have the vertical and horizontal things that you demonstrated at the beginning?
Yes, we do. In the back of the room, I've imported from Egypt the horizontal and vertical pendulum set. It comes with the 2 pendulums plus 2 length attachments that are used for testing specific types of earth energy lines. And it comes with a little brochure that explains the basic level of use of it. That's in the back. That's 122 for that set from Egypt. I've got the EG3 pendulum for testing the sensing vibration. Also directly imported from Egypt. That one's 69. I've got the laser. We also supply the cymatics device. We have the 2 types of adaptogenic stones we talked about here. So basically the things I have up here, we do have in the back. And also, if you do end up taking my online class to learn how to use these tools in much more detail, then, again, that's described here with vibrational testing and healing. And I basically created this handout here for what I'm going to give people at the conference this weekend. I wanted to give it to you as well. So it does include the information on the crystal class Nashville coming up, but also it's got a $50 discount sheet. And if you do sign up for any of my online classes in the next week, then if you put in this discount code, we'll take $50 off for you. So I wanted to offer you the same thing I was offering to people at the conference. Also, on this inside part of the handout, most of these live classes are already gone, except for the one coming up with the crystals. But at the bottom, it also describes some of my other online classes and gives my website. Okay, thank you. Yes, please.
You mentioned positive stones that do energy alchemy.
Yes.
That are there any others that you mentioned that do not need to be cleared?
The one that I found through direct testing that is the closest to a self-clearing stone is the indigo goblin. Most of the other ones that I find do need to be cleared from time to time.
Like tourmaline and selenite.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I see a lot of claims in books about, oh, these are self-clearing.
Yeah.
But I'm doing direct vibrational testing on them, and I'm finding that they're not cleared. And then when I ask these people, well, how did you determine that it was cleared? They said, oh, well, it feels better to me, or my guides told me, or something like that. But I'm still finding the detrimental vibration there. And when I test a person's energy field and do them hold it with blind testing, they're still affected by it. So I do find things need to be cleared on a fairly regular basis. One of the big problems today with people using stones for earth energy lines, electromagnetic fields, is also times, number one, they don't use the right stone. Because they don't understand about the vibrational bands that would indicate the actual correct function of the stone. And number two, they don't clean them often enough. So I have found 100 times where people have stones to correct the energy coming off their computer, etc. And they're completely infused with toxic vibration, and they're not using the right stone to begin with. Clear quartz is not the right stone to put in front of your computer to transform it.
Selenite?
No selenite either, because the whole issue is that clear quartz was used in classical traditions to amplify the vibrational field put into it. So it may work for a short period of time to help to balance the toxic energy coming off the computer, but as soon as it becomes completely infused with the vertical wave of negative green, which is the specific vibration that you're trying to balance off the computer, it then becomes an amplifier of that detrimental wave. And people are actually getting more of it than they would get before. Selenite is not a good stone to clear toxicity from the human energy field as a first step, because even though it will work, it is extremely brittle. It's gypsum, it's a very, very low on the hardness table, and what you'll find is that it'll start going very deep into its structure. It's very hard to clear, and it'll start literally cracking the form of the selenite. Selenite is a great stone to use after you have cleared the human energy field with other types of stones or oils. Then if you go over the field with the selenite smooths the field very, very nicely. But to try to soak up the gross level of detrimental vibrations as a first step, there are other stones that are much, much stronger for that. And many of those stones for absorbing are, as you might imagine, dark stones. Because the fact they're full of a black band means they're very absorbent. So black tourmaline, black obsidian, things of that kind are fantastic for that purpose, but they do have to be cleared.
What about putting them like through natural streams or in the moon, the full moon? I've heard that those are ways of clearing them.
Yes, this gets a bit involved. This is stuff I go into in a lot more detail in my online class, How to Use Crystals and Gemstones, where I talk about 12 different clearing methods and what stones they're appropriate for and when not to use it. But the upshot of it is that all of these methods have particular pluses and minuses. So you can't clean selenite in a running stream or you'll end up with nothing. It'll dissolve it.
Yeah.
Other things, running water works really well on. If you bury it in the ground, then you have to be very careful that you don't bury it at the place of a toxic earth energy line or a crossing of toxic earth energy lines. I see people saying, oh, I'm burying it in the ground, it's clearing it. No, now it's 10 times as toxic as it was because they buried it in an earth energy line because they didn't know how to test for them. Then same sort of thing for things like putting in the moonlight. Moonlight has a weak clearing effect and will not be strong enough to clear certain types of toxicity held deeply in the stone. It will have a type of charging effect, but that charging effect is more beneficial for some stones than others. So using the stones that have a name from classical traditions related to the moon, so like selenite from Selene, the goddess of the moon, or moonstone, pearl, they benefit very much when you test their vitality before and after being put in moonlight. Other stones, it doesn't do much for. Putting them in the sun to clear is great for some stones. Very hard, dark stones, they can handle it. If you put an opal out in the sun, you'll destroy it because it gets its power from water. So it's really a matter of knowing exactly what methods to clear them. For me, I clear all my stones with the energetic laser because I find it works for everything, and it goes very deep and it's very quick. But otherwise, it's a matter of knowing exactly what method works for each thing.
You said you had studied the frequencies of the animal parts and et cetera. Did you find a correlation to the healing that was traditionally done, you know, with Chinese, et cetera,
Absolutely.
that are now endangered animals?
Yes. So, again, I would not recommend using any animal parts from endangered animals, but there are things from non-endangered animals that are commonly used in classical medicine from traditions like in China. And again, any of those can be tested for their vibrational bands to see their effect. So for example, the red band that is present in, and this will sound odd to many Westerners, but from ants from a particular mountain in China. They use ants from Shanbai Mountain as a type of natural adaptogenic substance. And they've even found that it helps to activate the ATP in human beings at a chemical level with all types of modern testing. And what it does is it gives you tremendous vitality and strength without having any crash the way you would from sugar or coffee or things of that kind. So you can test these classical animal types of substances using Chinese medicine and other things for their bands to understand their principles, the way we could also with plants and stones. And in fact, that's the whole course that I just gave in Silicon Valley a few days ago. Yes, please.
You mentioned that orange, the orange frequency is good for purging toxins.
Yes.
Is there a corresponding stone that would?
Any stone that has the strong orange vibration in it. One of the reasons why, again, citrine as a stone was so prized by the Chinese is that citrine has a few particular qualities that are linked to the orange band. So one of the reasons why the Chinese will pay a high price for this is that it's linked to prosperity. And so this is linked to two aspects. One is that it helps to purge the toxicity out of the human energy system so that the centers can operate properly. And then another aspect of it is that the orange vibration is extremely vitalizing. And in addition to being vitalizing at the energy body level, at the emotional mental level, the orange band creates joy. It creates a positive outlook. It creates a willingness to work. And also another aspect of the orange band is that it can connect to the base chakra and the reproductive chakra. And what it actually does is it begins to amplify the energy in the base and reproductive chakra. Now the thing about citrine that's unusual for a stone vibration is that it will actually activate all the chakras to some extent, but particularly base and reproductive. And what's understood in systems like pranic healing from the Philippines is that to have prosperity, the two most important chakras are a very strong base chakra and reproductive chakra. So there are people that have done energy testing of all kinds of people to see a correlation between their chakra system and their level of prosperity. And it's always a matter of how big the base and reproductive chakra is. So those are some aspects related to citrine and the orange. And again, there's many other types of orange essential oils used for associated purposes, like we talked about the frankincense with the gold. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and close it down here and let everybody go home. Thank you all very, very much for coming. We'll be here for just a few minutes if you're interested in any stuff that I brought up in the back. And again, we do have the flyer for the Matters Conference. And also have some medical devices.